And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh Shai, Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh Shai, Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh Shai, Barakati Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Ba Racha HaKodash, Kof the Pa Arath, Hawad Wahaloyim Ratwatam Yatla, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Ba Racha HaKodash. And what I just said in the Lashon Kodash being the ancient Paleo-Hebrew, or in other words, the true biblical Hebrew for holy tongue or language. And what I just said is, all glory, honor, and praises abundantly and continuously to our power, Yahweh, the true name of the Heavenly Father, the true name of our Heavenly Father, who the world ignorantly and incorrectly calls God, and the name of His only begotten Son, our Savior, our Messiah, our Deliverer, Yahweh Shai, Hamashiach, who the world ignorantly and incorrectly calls Jesus Christ, in, or in other words, through the Holy Spirit. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and respect to the brothers teaching and pushing this truth out the four corners of the earth, to the hopeful elect, the 144,000 and the 1/3, as well as the rest of the elect scattered abroad amongst the heathen nations to the four corners of the earth, east, north, south, and west. To you I say, Shalom. This is your brother Ra'ib Tazadakwa coming back at you again, all through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, with another lesson, all through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Ratazah, Yahweh willing, it's going to be edifying and encouraging for you Achim, brothers, and any Achwath, sisters, that may be listening and or watching. Now this lesson tonight is going to be part 43 in an ongoing lesson series. Salakia. The title, the main title being For God So Loved the World. Okay. And this is part 43 tonight. And then each part has a subtitle, which early on in the lesson series, all the subtitles were the same. And then I changed it at part 15, but they stayed, but the subtitles were all the same for a while. And now the Spirit has me given a different subtitle to each part. So in the subtitle speaks directly to the precepts that we're getting into, the topic that we're getting into, in that particular part, all of which are supporting the main overarching topic or objective or point, which is that salvation is only for Israel, because the world that is being referred to here in John 3:16 with the main title, For God So Loved the World, and the God there is the Most High, Yahweh is His name. The world that is being referred to there is the world of Israel, okay? Because there's all kinds of worlds. The English word world has multiple meanings. And so you have to make sure when somebody says world to you, how do you know which of the English meanings apply? Well, it's from the context. and it's from, the surroundings and the settings and, the context and the body language and all of these things, where you're at, what they're pointing at, what they're looking at, what they're talking. All of these things let you know the particular context, so that you know which of the definitions of the English word world apply. However, in the Greek, they don't have the same word. It's different words. And all of those different words are wrapped up in, all of those different words speak to different definitions for the English word world. So you have to know which definition applies in the English, and in the Greek, you have to just know which word it is, because each word is going to have its own definition. Okay? And these definitions are all completely and totally different. And we covered this because we've been laying foundational work and groundwork ever since we started, and that's still what we're doing. But we're wrapping up the last segment of that. But we're taking our time and we're working the point in very, very well through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah. So, we could have just spent one part on it, or we could have even just mentioned it and kept right on going. But this increases the footprint of the truth. And for those that are really seeking the edification, it makes it readily available. For those that really want to get the understanding. Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing. Get thee therefore wisdom, and in all of thy getting, get understanding. So if you really want the understanding, well, then that's why we go into all these different precepts. And whereas we could have broken something down and explained it in one part with just a couple of precepts, we get a lot of different aspects of it. And of course, as we do that, additional precepts come up. And as we do that, other related topics come up, and we go all into that as the Spirit leads. So with this groundwork and this foundational work, we have, in addition to touching on the meaning of words and looking behind the English to find out what the Greek is so that we can see what the meaning is. All right. For example, we talked about the Greek word cosmos, which means a subset or part of the whole, not the whole. Okay. So it's going to be a part of the whole, which is arranged and ordered in a certain particular fashion. All right, you look it up in the blue letter, an apt and harmonious arrangement, order, constitution, government, such as, for example, the government of the nation of Israel. Because each nation, heathen and Israelite alike, each and every single nation can be likened unto its own individual cosmos, translated to the English word world. But the world in John 3:16 is singular. For God so loved the world, singular, not worlds, plural. It is singular. It's only one of them. And of course, you already know that's Israel. Okay? It is not the Greek word oikomene. The Greek word oikomene is used in the scriptures in the New Testament. Okay? Not very often, but it is used. And that is the Greek word that means the whole planet and everyone that lives on it. Heathen and Israelites alike. Doesn't matter. That's when you use the Greek word oikomene. That's not the Greek word used in John 3:16, because John 3:16 is not talking about everybody. All right. And Revelation 3:10 is where you can find oikomene. Revelation 3:10 is talking about everybody. It is talking about the whole planet, not John 3:16. That's why John 3:16 is cosmos, not oikomene. And cosmos is the Greek word that is most often used, well, because the New Testament is most often referring to the world of Israel. But you do see oikomene in some places like Revelation 3:10, because that is talking about everybody. And you do find the other Greek word, which is aeon, translated to world, in a few places. Okay, and that's talking about a period of time, all right, or an age or a period of time. It starts and it finishes. You can find that in Hebrews 1 and 2. All right. Now, so we covered that. We covered hell, because it's very important to understand what hell is, because people are afraid of going to hell. So they're not going to hear anything you got to say. They're not going to hear any precepts that you bring out. They're not going to hear any explanation that you give, properly breaking down the scriptures, rightly dividing the word of truth, because they're just too afraid. Okay. And fear short circuits logic. So we had to bring out the fact that Hell, according to the scriptures, is simply the grave, whether literally the grave or metaphorically the grave. And we did that first in part 1. We got another very important doctrine to understand, which if you don't understand it, you will not understand the scriptures. Well, you could say that about almost all the doctrines, but this is one of the key ones to really bring things together. And that's that reincarnation is biblical. All right, Matthew the 11th chapter, verses 13, 14, and 15. Yahweh Shai also elsewhere told the disciples that John the Baptist has already come, and they did unto him whatsoever they listed. Or in other words, John the Baptist, I meant to say Elijah the prophet, because that's who Yahweh Shai said Elijah the prophet was. That's who he said John the Baptist was. John the Baptist was Elijah the prophet. Okay, that's Matthew 11, 13, 14, and 15. And he said, yeah, well, Elijah the prophet's already come, and they just did whatever they wanted to him. In other words, they imprisoned him and cut off his head. And when they did that, that was Elijah the prophet coming back as John the Baptist. All right. And that was in accordance with the prophecy of Malachi 4 and 5, which has been fulfilled in its entirety to the max in this time. All right. By a man by the name of Elder Bivens. All right. And he was murdered in this time as well. All right. But he's the one that the Most High used to give this truth. He gave the truth to Elder Bivens, which was Elijah the prophet, in accordance with Malachi 4 and 5. And this truth began with him through the Spirit. All right. And it's grown since then, and it's become refined as well to the truth that we have now. But the core of it, which is the majority of it, okay, not much has been revealed since then, but there have been some things that have been revealed that were not revealed to Elder Bivens, but the bulk of it, the large bulk of it, was revealed to him, and there's been some refinements to it as well, okay, because the truth was not given to Elder Bivens completely and totally, but the bulk of it was, and it was not given to him in a completely perfect form either. All right, there were some errors, if you want. I guess there's just no other way to put it. But there was some things that were not correct at first, and all of that was worked out through the Spirit, and that's all the Heavenly Father's doing. But it's been worked out since then, and most of it long ago. All right, back early on. And it's been worked out because, for example, it wasn't at first understood that Cornelius was an Israelite. All right, and my understanding, when the truth was first given to Elder Bivens, if I understand correctly, as I listen to the elders and apostles of GMS, talk about these things through the Spirit from time to time as the Spirit brings it up. As I also understand, they originally thought that, or I don't remember. I might not be 100% on that, so I'm not going to mention it. But the point is that there was the truth was in a bit of a raw form when it was first given to us, and it's been refined, and it's also been expanded. We have the more complete and refined truth now over the decades. Okay, so I forgot what got me on that, but yeah, the reincarnation. So, and then from there, we got into the 3 Greek words, which I already touched on for you. And then from there, we got into what salvation is. Very important to understand that, because it makes it very obvious that salvation is only for Israel when you understand what it is, because it does not make any sense whatsoever that it would be for the heathen once you know what salvation truly is. So we got into that next. We spent quite a bit of time into that, like, I want to say like 6 or 7 parts. And then we got into the final piece of groundwork, which is what we're in now. We got into that in part 15, and we've been in that for quite some time. You can see we're now on part 43. Yeah, so we've been in this since part 15, which is establishing this right here. If I had to choose one, it's very hard to do that, but if I had to choose one, yeah, I'm pretty confident I would choose this as the most essential part of the groundwork. Okay, understanding that there's 2 groups of Gentiles, 2 groups of foreigners, 2 groups of heathen, 2 groups of strangers. All of those 4 terms being synonymous, which once you understand that, then you must also, of necessity, recognize that anytime you see any of those 4 terms in the scriptures, you have to make sure you know which of the 2 groups is talking about. And you also have to know what the 2 groups are. But that's pretty easy. Okay, it's pretty easy because the scriptures makes it obvious, but it's also pretty easy because it's obvious, right? If one of the groups of heathen, foreigners, strangers, and Gentiles is the natural born that do not go back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or you can just say Jacob, because if you go back to Jacob, then you also go back to Abraham and Isaac. So let's just keep it simple. Jacob, that are not descendants of Jacob, name later changed to Israel, right? If one of the groups are the natural born heathen, then who are the only other people on the planet? The only other people on the planet are the people that do go back to Jacob, that are descendants of Jacob, which means the only other people on the planet are Israelites, which means the other group of heathen, foreigners, strangers, and Gentiles have to be Israelites because they're the only other people on the planet. So you see, it's very easy to know that. But in case your thinkinator is malfunctioning or your thinkinator's out of juice, well, the scriptures make it plain too, right? And we went to Matthew 18 and 17 all by itself, makes it very obvious. Yep, two groups. And it also makes it very obvious. Yep, one of the groups is Israelites. Then we went to St. John 7 and 35. You don't need to, but we went to both of them. I think we went to St. John 7 and 35 first, then to Matthew 18 and 17. That also makes it very obvious that it's two groups of Israelites. Yep, two groups of Gentiles, rather. Yep, two groups of it. There are two groups of Israelites as well, but I meant to say two groups of Gentiles. Yep, two groups of Gentiles, and yep, one of the groups is Israelites. So it makes it pretty easy. And then we've just recently added a third precept right along with those two, which does the exact same thing. And that's Genesis 15 and 13. Let me make sure I got that precept right, because I'm going to keep that one in my mental Rolodex. Which also does the exact same thing. Two groups of Gentiles, foreigners, heathen, strangers, and one of the groups is Israelites. Okay, you got to know that. Okay, here's the, yep. And the he here is the Most High. Okay, the Most High Yahweh, our Father. Okay, and he said unto Abram, his name hadn't been changed yet, know of a surety. Okay, you can be sure that. That's the way the NLT puts it, and that's good. Know of a surety that thy seed. Okay, any of Abraham's seed? Any of Abram's seed? No, not any. The Most High doesn't care about the other seed. He only cares about the son of the promise, which is Isaac, right? And so the seed he's talking about here is those that are going to go through Isaac and then ultimately through Jacob. The seed of the promise, okay? Okay, know of a surety that thy seed, down to Isaac, down to Jacob, Jacob's name later changed to Israel, meaning when he says the seed, he's talking about the Israelites. Know of a surety that thy seed, the Israelites, shall be a stranger. Clearly, these strangers are Israelites. See, there's two groups. You can put this right with St. John 7 and 35 and right next to Matthew 18 and 17. All three of these precepts are equal with regards to proving that there's two groups of strangers, foreigners, heathen, and Gentiles, and that one of the groups is Israelites in a land that is not theirs. Talking about ancient Egypt, not modern day spiritual Egypt. Although you can draw parallels, yes, but this is talking about ancient Egypt, not modern day spiritual Egypt. And where is modern day spiritual Egypt, you might ask? Well, pursuant to Revelation 11 and 8, this place is also modern day spiritual Sodom, and that's America, Babylon the Great. And shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years, right? All right, so let's so that's where we're at now. We're doing that, and we've been working that point, and we only needed one part to do it, and really in that one part we only needed one verse to do it, and we proved with any one of those three verses. You proved just one of them by itself. You proved two groups of Gentiles, foreigners, heathen, strangers, and one of the groups is Israelites. Why are Israelites being referred to as foreigners, heathen, strangers, and Gentiles? Well, here it's not for the reason I'm about to say, because the reason I'm about to say is the reason that's most applicable. Okay, but there are other reasons, right? But the reason why is because typically with regards to the New Testament, it's because they're in a foreign, heathen, or strange, or a Gentile state of mind. That's the mindset they're in. They're living like the heathen, acting like the heathen, eating like the heathen, eating abominable foods like the heathen, dressing like the heathen, and most importantly, worshiping the heathen pagan idol gods. So they're in a heathen, foreign, strange, Gentile state of mind. Therefore, that's what they're being called. Even though they're Israelites by lineage, by heritage, by bloodline through their fathers, by birth. Two groups. Okay? So that's what we're doing now. And now we've been working through that, and we're just about wrapping up Romans the 9th chapter, which we have broken down in its entirety, starting at verse 1, going down to 33. We're technically at the end of it, still breaking it down, because we're getting a precept passage in Galatians the 3rd chapter. That sent us over to... Wait a minute. No, we're getting a precept passage in... Yes, we were breaking down Ephesians 2. That sent us over to Romans 9. And then as we got down to the bottom of Romans 9, that is sent us over to Galatians 3. Galatians 3 sent us over to Romans 3, which sent us to Romans 7, and then back to Romans 3. We finished up Romans 3 last night, and now we're back in Galatians 3, and we're going to wrap up Galatians 3. When we wrap up Galatians 3, we're done with Romans 9, and when we're done with Romans 9, we're back in Ephesians 2. Yeah, that's where we've been. Oh, and that's just recently. We've been a lot of other places too. More than that, a lot more than that. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off, because tonight we're going to get into some history, as you can tell from the opening precept passage. So let's go to the Galatians 3, and we've already broken down starting at verse 23 all the way down to 27, and that's what sent us specifically that verse 24, or you can say 23 through 25, focusing on the 24. That's what sent us over to Romans 3, and all those other precepts I just told you about, right? But now we're back, because we've taken care of all that. We've gone through all of that, and now we're back, and that took, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 parts that we've been doing all that. So now we're back here, Galatians 3. There is neither Jew, circumcision, Jew, Israelite that remained in the land, keeping the laws, commandments, and statutes. Like I told you, I misspoke. I meant to say there's 2 groups of Gentiles, and I said there's 2 groups of Israelites, and then I said, well, there is 2 groups of Israelites, but I meant to say 2 groups of Gentiles. Well, here's your 2 groups of Israelites right here. There is neither Jew nor Gentile. Oh, my bad. That's not what it says. It says Greek. Now, you go over to the NLT, it does say Gentile, but that's not quite correct. Let's look at this word. You see it's Greek, all right? And you see here it is the Greek word Hellen, okay? Not to be confused with Hellenistes, I believe it is, Hellenistes, which we're gonna go into those 2 words, and we're gonna kind of compare and contrast those 2 words in more detail when we get to the book of Acts, because that's history too, okay? Because, well, that was 2,000 years ago. So, but here it's the Greek word Hellen, right? And you see it's been translated to Greek most often, but it's also been translated to Gentile, which Greeks are Gentiles, right? But the Greek is a more appropriate translation for it, and here's the reason why. The word literally means, well, let me see what this root word is here. Hellas, okay? Okay, so it just comes from that. Greek, unstable, the Maru one, okay? Got it. But the word literally means a Greek, either by you see this is the reason why, although you can translate it to Gentiles because Greeks are Gentiles, it is more exact to translate it to Greek. All right, a Greek, either by nationality. All right, now this word Gentile is usually the Greek word ethnos. So when you see Gentile, it's usually going to be that, or heathen, it's usually going to be that Greek word ethnos. See, that's why I like Greek for this instead of Gentile, although Greeks are Gentiles, so technically it's not wrong. Okay, but you do lose some of the meaning, you lose some of the connotation. This isn't talking about Gentiles in a general sense. This is talking specifically about Greeks. Okay, that word ethnos would be more suitable for Gentile or heathen in a general sense. You see here, this is a Greek, okay, either by nationality, all right, which the original Greeks were descendants of Japheth. They were one of the Japhetic nations. But the Edomites, Micah 2 and 2, he coveteth the field and taketh it by violence. That's talking about the biblical Edomites, the wicked, on the highest level anyway. Okay. Right. So the Edomites took them down and stood up in their place. That's what we were. If we would have started that first Maccabees chapter 1 at verse 1, that's what it's talking about. Talking about Philip of Macedon and his son Alexander the Great. They were Edomites. Okay. They were Edomites ruling as the Greeks because they had taken down the Japhetic people and stood up in their place. And the original Romans were Japhetic people as well, and they also were taken down, assimilated. Okay, basically, just basically kind of swallowed up. Just Esau. That's what it says in what's that? Sirach, the 12th chapter, or is it the 10th chapter? 12th chapter, I believe it is. Okay. Set him not by thee, lest he stand up in thy place. Okay, because that's what they do. Sometimes he'll do it, by more subtlety and deceit, and sometimes he'll do it more by the sword, and a lot of times he'll do it by a combination of both. But next thing you know, you got this devil around you. Next thing you know, you on the bottom and he on the top. you like, how'd that happen? Okay, you don't even know how it happened. Okay, so but they took over and ruled as the Greeks. So this is a Greek either by nationality, all right, and in that context, it would be talking about whoever is ruling as the Greeks. And by the way, let's go ahead and prove that these Greeks were actually Edomites. All we got to do is go to the bottom of 1 Maccabees 2, and it's going to say it in multiple places. No, I meant to say 4. It's going to say it in multiple places, but this is one of them. It's very easy to prove that. Okay, because most often they're going to be referred to as the Greeks and all that. They're going to be called by name. But it was very well known that these Greeks were actually Edomites. Okay, and they set there a garrison, 1 Maccabees 4:61. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethsura to preserve it, that the people, our people, the nation of Israel, might have a defense against the Greeks. Yeah, it is the Greeks, right? But here we're going to call them who they truly are, because everybody knows Idumea, which is the Greek way of saying Esau, Edom. It was no secret. It was known. These Greeks actually are the nation of Edom. Okay, Idumea. All right, and there's a couple other places where it calls them out as well. But let's get back over here. All right, a Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. So this would be, so when you see this word Greek, it could be talking about those that are actually of the nation that's ruling as the Greeks, whether originally the Japhetic people or whether it's the Edomites that were standing up in their place. Okay, either way, you would call them the Greeks that are Greeks by nationality, because they were once they stood up in the place of the original Greeks, everybody said, okay, you're the Greeks. So it would be used to talk about them as well, although they were not the original Greeks. But this first definition would apply to them. Okay, in a wider sense. Now this is going to go off here, and it's going to be obvious if you know what's going on and you know what time it is. It's obvious that they are trying to hide something from you here, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to point it out to you. In a wider sense, okay, nothing wrong with that. The name embraces all nations. Okay, so far so good. Not Jews. What? That made the why not the Jews? Why not the Israelites? That made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. And the scripture makes it obvious that this is a goddamn lie. But why are they doing this? Because they're trying to hide something from you, man. Very important. What they're trying to hide from you is very important. Okay? It makes no sense that it would be all nations but not Israelites. And when we get the history over in 1 Maccabees, it's going to be very obvious that it also is the Israelites. Because you should be, when you read that, all nations, not Jews, you should be scratching your head. Well, why not the Jews? Why not them too, right? And it's going to make it very obvious that, under Antiochus Epiphanes, we're going to read it when we get to it, probably not tonight, but under Antiochus Epiphanes, the Jews were not even allowed to call themselves Jews. Well, if they're not allowed to call themselves Jews, then what were they forced to call themselves? Well, whatever they were forced to call themselves, it wasn't Greeks. Right? Well, who is ruling? The Greeks. So they can't call themselves Jews, right? They ain't call themselves Greeks? No. What did they call themselves? No, man, they call themselves Greeks. They were forced to call themselves Greeks. So it's obvious that this is a lie. And why? Because they're hiding it from you, man. This is the history which makes it this is the history which illuminates the mystery of the Gentiles. Okay? In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, but not the Jews, though. That's odd. All nations. You should stop there. Strike out not the Jews, because yes, Israelites included. All nations, skip the not Jews, because that doesn't belong there. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own, including the Jews, including the Israelites. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. I'm not even sure what they're getting at with that. That's not even needed. Okay? The primary reference, this is probably more deceit. And that's why I don't understand why it's there. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. No, it's everything. Come on, man. Made the language and the customs and the learning of the Greeks their own. No, yeah. That last part doesn't belong either. Okay? So just this is all you need. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own, including the Israelites. Okay? And that's what was going on over in 1 Maccabees 1, which we started with and we opened up with, and it gets a lot worse as we read down. A lot worse as we read down. See? So these are the Greeks, and that's the reason why it says that's the reason why the Apostle Paul said there's neither Jew nor Greek. And I think he says it also in the book of Romans. I hit Galatians. I meant to say Romans. We're in Galatians. Is that also in Romans 3? I know he mentions, we just covered it, but he mentions, there's another place where he says it more explicitly. Let me search for it. Okay. There you go, Romans 10 and 12. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, not Gentile. Okay? Okay, look in Colossians as well. He said it again, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free. The barbarians and the Scythian, come on, man, you already know. Because if the Greeks and the Jews are both, obviously the Jews, but if the Greeks are also Israelites, and the circumcision and the uncircumcision are both Israelites, then the barbarians and the Scythians are natural born heathen. No, man, the barbarians and the Scythians are also Israelites. Okay, that's why they're being mentioned. Okay, otherwise, well, Paul, why'd you stop there? Why don't you keep on going and start just keep mentioning everybody? No, everybody's not Israelites. Okay, but the barbarians and the Scythians were Israelites. Okay, but let's take a look at this Romans 10 and 12. Okay, and we're going to see this word Greek again. Okay, and you see there, it's the same word, G1672. Okay, so when we go back over here, but that's the reason why he uses that word. That's the reason why it's not. Let's check. I didn't. Hopefully this will bring back up. Let's check the other two places as well. Now it came up for me easy the first time. Now it's giving me a hard time. Come on, there you go. So far, 2 for 2. Phew. Let's try Jew. Okay. All right. We got the Galatians. We got the Romans 10. No, it's we can get the Romans 1 and 16, but that's not exactly the same. Let's get Colossians 3. Okay. Interlinear. And I skipped it. I went past it. Yeah, I did. Oh, it's up to the top this time. Same word, G1672. That's the reason why it's Greek, it's Helen, not ethnos. You see? That's the reason why it's Helen, not ethnos. Because if the Apostle Paul was making the point, remember the Apostle Peter's, let me say that again. Remember the Apostle Peter's warning about Paul's epistles. It's very easy to get the wrong idea and get twisted up and turned around and think the Apostle Paul is saying something that he's not. It's very easy to think the Apostle Paul is saying the exact opposite of what he's actually saying, because the Apostle Paul is writing what he's writing on a very high level. And because he's on such a high level and he understands these deep mysteries that were, many of which were given to him and not to the others, okay? So much so that he had to be given a thorn in the flesh to keep him humble. That's how many mysteries and much wisdom was given to him. Okay. And when he writes about it, it's very easy for it to kind of be over your head. And if you're not careful, you'll think he's saying the opposite of what he's saying, which will make you a believer and teacher of damnable heresies. So you got to be very careful, and you'll get destruction. So that's 2 Peter 3:15 and 16. You got to be very careful in the Apostle Paul's epistles. Very careful. Okay? But if he was talking about, when he says there's neither Jew nor Greek, that Greek meant any nation, everyone on the planet, then why is it Greek? He should have said there's neither Jew nor ethnos. But he didn't say there's neither Jew nor ethnos. He said there's neither Jew nor Helen. Oh, okay, so that's really just getting into the Greeks, though. It's not really talking about everybody, all nations, right? Right. So why did he say Helen instead of ethnos? Okay, and if salvation's for all nations, then why did he leave all the other nations out? He left them out because they're not included. All right, okay, so they're not included. So then what's the deal with these Greeks then? Well, they're Israelites. I already told you that. And what we started to read in 1 Maccabees 1 is how Israelites became Greeks. We read the beginning of it, and it gets much, much worse. But that's what we read. We read the beginning. This is one of the main reasons. There's a number of reasons why, but this is one of the main reasons why the Apocrypha was taken out of the scriptures 150 years ago. Because it was only taken out 150 years ago by a group called the Bible Destruction Group. Okay? This history here is not easy to find on the internet. The internet's been kind of scrubbed of it. It's hard to find this information now. Okay, but you may be able to find it if you look hard enough and you got enough time. All right. But then it's been kind of buried. I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere, but it's going to be real hard to find it. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. The Spirit will have to lead you to it. Or you just have faith and you believe it, right? Because it should be making sense. And even though you can't find that history too easy, all right, I'm not saying it's impossible, but you can't find that history too easy. The history that I'm telling you about the Apocrypha, that is not so hard to find. That's pretty easy to find, okay? The Apocrypha was taken out 150 years ago, but when the 1611 King James Version Bible was put together, the Apocrypha was in it. And it was in it for 274 years. 274 years. And why was the Apocrypha in the 1611 King James Version original Bible for 274 years? Because that's where it belongs. Well, maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they just, no. Why did the King James Version translators put the Apocrypha in the scriptures? Because it's always been in the scriptures. It's always been regarded as scripture. And it was taken out by the Bible Destruction Group just before you were born. All right. And then here you come along being born. Hey, I was in the same boat too. Me too, right? But when this information was presented to me, I saw it for the truth that it is. So then here you come along being born, and you have no clue, because they hand you a Bible with only 66 books in it, and you have no clue. And then when somebody comes along later on and tries to say, hey, your Bible's incomplete, you attack them. Because as the saying goes, a new sucker is born every minute. Every minute a new sucker is born. Hey, everybody gets on to you. Hey, man, everybody's on to me. I can't fool anybody. Well, that's all right. Just wait a minute. We'll have a whole new batch of suckers. And we'll go ahead and take advantage of them. Since we can't take advantage of anybody else now. They're all on to us, right? So a new sucker. So don't be a sucker. Don't be a sucker. Okay? I'm going to get you, sucker. Don't be a sucker. Okay? The Apocrypha is scripture. But this is one of the main reasons they took it out. Because with this history in there, it's hard to push the lie that these Greeks are natural born heathen. Well, it should already be kind of interesting to you that it's the Greek word Helen instead of ethnos. But you know, people don't look at the Greek. Right? They don't look at the Greek. But it's also translated into English to Greek. So why does it say Greek and not why does it say Greek and not Gentiles? Okay? Set the NLT aside. The NLT should have translated to Greek, and I already showed you that. So why does it say Greek and not Gentiles? I know, because the Greeks, that's talking about all the heathen nation too, right? No, it's not. Well, how you know? How you know? Well, here's how you know. Here's how you know that word Greeks is not talking about all heathen nations. The word Helen is not talking about all heathen nations. Because, number one, the word Helen is never used to refer to all heathen on the planet, point blank, period. Never. It's only used to refer to all heathen on the planet that have adopted the customs of the Greeks. It's never used to refer to heathen on the planet that have not that have not adopted the customs of the Greeks. Heathen on the planet that are not Greeks and have not adopted the customs of the Greeks are never called Greeks. So when the Apostle Paul says there's neither Jew nor Greeks, well, I guess those heathen are left out. I guess they can't get salvation. It ain't talking about no natural born heathen. See, the term Greeks is never used to refer to all heathen on the planet, point blank, period. It's only used to refer to heathen on the planet that have adopted the customs of the Greeks. So if he was using that to mean natural born heathen, you still up the creek without a paddle, because unless everybody on the planet adopts the customs of the Greeks, they're SOL. They're up the creek without a paddle. You're not a Greek. Sorry. You got to become a Greek first before you can get salvation. See, this is absurd, man. The Greeks is talking about there are Israelites that adopted the customs of the Greeks. That's why it's limited to Greeks. Helen. All right. So let's take a look at that Galatians 3 one more time before we get into that first Maccabees. Galatians 3. Down at the bottom. There is neither Jew, Israelite that remained in the land and resisted becoming Hellenized and refused to become Hellenized, even under threat of death, nor Greek, Israelite that capitulated, Israelite that consented, Israelite that forsook the laws, commandments, and statutes, the ways of Yahweh Shemashah, and adopted the customs of the Greeks and began to be called Greek or Greeks. So there is neither Jew, Israelite, nor Greek, Israelite. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, because the daughters of Zion, and this is first and foremost about the men. The flock of my pasture are men. However, the daughters of Zion are also fellow heirs to the grace of life. So that's why there's neither male nor female. The daughters of Zion are going to get deliverance and salvation too. Okay? For ye are all one in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. And if you be Hamashiachs, then are ye Abraham's seed. Now, this is where I can think that the heathen, these pagan Christians, heathen of the Israelite variety and the natural born heathen, two groups there is, right? But could come and say, see, there's a third thing as spiritual Israelites. No, there's not. These are Israelites. The believers at Galatia were Israelites. Okay, being called Greeks, being called Galatians. Okay, and this is the same thing that the Apostle Paul was saying in Romans. Okay, Romans 9. We already broke that down. Okay, all right, and they are not all Israel, which are of Israel. Okay, they are not. I forget how he said it. Let me go refresh my memory. This is the same thing he was saying over here. Okay. Yeah, this one right here. Neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac. No, it's like that's a related point. This is the point I was talking about. Not as though the word of the Most High had taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. In other words, everybody that comes through the loins of Jacob, Israel, is not Israel, but they are Israel. That's why you got to have the understanding. They are Israel, but they're not Israel. What do you mean, Rod? Sounds like you're saying two different things, two opposite things. No, two different contexts. Are they Israelites by lineage, by heritage, by bloodline, by birth? Yes. But they're not Israelites because they're opposing the truth. They're enemies of the truth. And that's not what Israelites are supposed to do. So you're not an Israelite. Although you are an Israelite, you're not an Israelite. But you're still an Israelite. But you're not. Sounds like you're talking out both sides of your mouth, but you're not. You got to have to understand it. This is the same thing. That's what I told you, man. You got to be very careful in the Apostle Paul's epistles. Okay? Like the Apostle Peter said. You got to have the understanding. And you can get turned around and twisted around and turned upside down. Because the Apostle Paul was talking and writing on a very high level with the wisdom that was given to him directly by Yahushua. And the Apostle Paul wasn't necessarily keen to slow down and wait for you to catch up. Right? So you got to have the understanding. Right? And when you have the understanding, it's like, oh, makes perfect sense. Yeah, it does. But if you don't have to understand, you're like, man, we need to just get rid of these epistles here. These are Paul didn't know what he was talking about. We should just take his epistles out of the Bible. You have people saying that. They're complete and total biblically illiterate. They're complete and total Bible idiots. But then they want to say take Paul's epistles out of the Bible. Okay, because they have zero understanding. All right, but this is the same idea as this Romans 9 and 6. So let's go back over here and look at it real quick. And if you be Hamashiach, then are ye Abraham's seed. Okay? And heirs according to the promise. Then are you're of the elect. Okay? So in other words, if you put your faith in Yahushua, Hamashiach, then you are truly Abraham's seed. Because we already know a little while ago we was getting into some of the words that Yahushua was saying to the wicked scribes and Pharisees, and he was telling them, I know you're Abraham's seed. Yeah, you're Abraham's seed. You're descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeah, you're Israelites. You are Israelites. Yes, you're Israelites. But you're not Israelites. See? Because I told you, man, already, the Apostle Paul learned directly from Yahushua. But you're not Israelites. You're actually of your father, the devil, which he was talking spiritually, okay? Literally, physically, they were Israelites, okay? And they are Israelites, and they're always going to be Israelites. But he was talking spiritually, okay? And spiritually, they weren't, okay? But ultimately, they are, okay? You're an Israelite, you're always going to be an Israelite. But in the context he was speaking, they're not. In the context that the Apostle Paul is talking here, they're not. But are they not in every context? No, they are. They are Israelites. They're Israelites. You keeping up? Okay? And if you be Hamashiachs, then are ye Abraham's seed, right? Okay, that's also what Revelation 2 and 9 and 3 and 9 is talking about, okay? Now, we use it today for the biblical Edomites, and it applies to them to the greatest degree, right? But when it was given to John on the Isle of Patmos, it was talking about Israelites not being saying they're Jews and they're not. Because although they are Jews, they're not Jews. Same thing, man. Okay? And if you be Hamashiachs, then are you, because to be an Israelite means that you're supposed to have a certain mindset and be moving and operating in a certain way. It's like you have a father and he has sons and daughters, but the sons and daughters aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And finally, he eventually gets so upset with them and their infractions and their offenses become so egregious that he says, I see no sons and daughters of mine here. And that's a movie line, right? He cuts them off. Even though they are his sons and daughters, he tells them, you're not my sons, you're not my daughters, right? It's that type of idea. Okay, it's like the idea of a father who cuts off his daughter for being a hoe, or a father who cuts off his son for being a mo. Right? Are they still his blood? Yes, but he's cut them off, so no. But they are, but they're not. See, it's that type of idea. That shouldn't be too hard to see. And if you be a Mashiach, then are you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. If you doing what you're supposed to do, then you're really part of the family. Kind of type of thing. Okay? This right here is my son. Okay? You know, yeah, because he's doing the things that his father can delight in. Okay? As opposed to doing the things that his father hates, and doing that basically worse and worse and worse for an extended period of time, and then capping it off with an especially egregious infraction, and his father goes, "You're no son of mine," right? And, you know, but what does he ultimately do if the son eventually repents and he ultimately takes his son back and you are my son? Because when he said you're not my son, he wasn't talking about literally not his son. He was talking about spiritually. Okay? So now let's go and get into this history here a little bit with the time that remains. Okay? We're just going to kind of, we're almost at an hour. So we're just going to touch on this 10 through 15, which is really setting the stage for this 41 on down. That's where we're really going to dig in. And in the middle here, this is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes going in. Originally, he went to Egypt. Okay, you can see that there, 16 and 17, and 18. Okay. And 19, but then he came back and he started to trouble us, and you can read about that here down in the verses that you see on the screen, going down to 40, right? And he started causing us some serious trouble, and then in 41 it gets into the Hellenization. It gets deep into the Hellenization. The Hellenization began up here, so we're going to touch on this, and then next time we come back, we're going to start at that 41. All right, so, you know, sinus is a little stuffy still. All right, so, yeah, so, and there came out of them, right? Let's read here. Okay, this is talking about the crown, the four main generals. From what I understand, there was actually 5 main generals, but the 5th general was the most powerful of the 5, and the 4 all decided, well, hey, look, we ain't gonna have a shot with him around, so let's just gang up on him and take him down. And from what I understand, that's what they did. And as the saying goes, there is no honor among thieves, right? And Esau is a murderer of his brethren. Okay, and if he isn't murdering his brother Jacob, then he'll be murdering his other fellow Edomite brethren, right? That's why they're always warned amongst themselves. Okay, you know, there is no honor amongst thieves, right? So the them is these 4 main generals that were ruling. Okay, they split the kingdom up amongst them. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay, which is around about 165 BC, about there. All right. Okay, and those days went there out of Israel wicked men. Nothing new. Nothing new. Those wicked men are back again now. I already told you, reincarnation is biblical. Those wicked men are back here now. Who persuaded many. The majority. A lot. The majority. The majority were persuaded. Many were persuaded. Okay, by these wicked men. So the wicked men today, the wicked men of the nation of Israel today, they have a lot of persuasive ability, and they have persuaded many again. Okay, the vast majority of Israelite men are not going to make it. Okay, the only men of the nation of Israel that are of the elect and going to make it is the 144,000, which is the prophets and the friends of the prophets. The prophets don't have a lot of friends. We don't know How many? Because as it says in Amos 5, they make him an offender. They hate, no, that's a different precept. They hateth him that rebuketh in the gate. Okay? So we're hated. Yahweh Shai told us, you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. So we don't have a lot of friends. Okay? I'd be surprised if it's more than 2 per prophet. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's only 1. Or if the prophet's got to share friends. It's less than 1. You know, we got to share. Right? It's something like that. It's somewhere between less than 1 to 2. I don't think it's any more than 2. But, you know, we don't know the exact number. But it's not a lot. Okay? And the majority is with the wicked men. And they persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen. See, that is absolutely, what's the word I'm looking for? Wicked. Let's just go with wicked. Okay, yeah, it's good, man. Good. Wicked. That's just absolutely wicked. Making a covenant with the heathen? What fellowship have darkness with light? What fellowship hath the Most High with Belial? Making a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. Hey, this is nothing new. This sentiment was expressed before. I believe it's going to be. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find it. Got to deal. There we go. Let me see. If I can, what should I search for? I think this will bring it up, and I think it's in Jeremiah. Yeah, I think this is it in Jeremiah 44 right here. Yep, there it is. See, boom. We don't even have to get it. It's right there. 44, 17, and 18. Same sentiment. There is no new thing under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1 and 9. That thing which has been has already been before. Okay? That thing which has been is now. That's Ecclesiastes 1 and 9 and 3 and 15. Okay? But we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth. This is in defiance to the will of the Most High. This is in defiance to thus saith Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai. Yahweh at the time, because Yahweh Shai hadn't come yet. This is in defiance to thus saith Yahweh, as spoken by the prophets. This is defiance here. This is rebellion here. And as Samuel told Saul, rebellion is as witchcraft, and stubbornness is as idolatry. Two very, very, especially that idolatry. Okay? Both are worthy of death. They're high-level offenses to the Most High. Okay? But we will certainly do whatsoever thing go forth out of our own mouth. This is rebellion. To burn incense into the Queen of Heaven. In other words, we're going to do whatever we want to do. We want to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven. We're going to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven. That's the attitude here. And to pour out drink offerings unto her. We want to pour out drink offerings into the Queen of Heaven. Okay? Which would be the Holy Spirit of pagan Christianity. And that's also, by the way, the Statue of Liberty. That's what it is. It's a statue of Ishtar going to the Queen of Heaven. And that's what Mary is in the Roman Catholic Church, which is the false prophet. That's all the Queen of Heaven. And to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done. We and our fathers, our kings and our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem, for then had we plenty of victory. Look, yeah, we're going to keep doing it. We want to do that. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Because when we were doing it, things were good for us. We had lots of good food to eat. We had chicken nuggets, and we had Mickey D's, and we had KFC, and we had the dollar menu, and we had all kinds of good to eat. We had Joe's Crab Shack, and we're well, and saw no evil. Everything was real good for us when we were doing our idolatry. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, yeah, then you come here talking about you rebuking us and stuff, telling us we going off. So you kind of caught us off guard for a second, so we kind of stopped. And when we stopped, we realized something. Things ain't going good for us no more. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things. Yeah, ever since we stopped, because you come around, ever since we stopped, now we ain't got nothing good to eat no more. Whose God is their belly. That's really talking about on a spiritual level, but the physical is a manifestation of that. Okay? And have been consumed by the sword and by the famine. And when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven and poured our drink offerings unto her, yeah, when we was worshiping our idols, did we make her cake? Did we make her cakes to worship her and pour out drink offerings unto her without our men? And so, you get the point. We can get out of here. Okay? It's the same sentiment here. Okay? It's the same sentiment. Where were we? Yeah, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. And when they were with them, what were they doing? They were serving their pagan gods. So this device pleased them well, just like it did in Jeremiah. Okay? Because that didn't end well. That did not end well for them when you read the account in Jeremiah. Then certain other people were so forward herein. These were the most wicked of the wicked. These were the extremely, you had the wicked and you had the extremely wicked. Then certain other people were so, and you see that now in our people today. You see them doing wickedness, and then you'll see these like champions in wickedness. Okay? You'll see everybody doing wickedness. Oh my, look at this wickedness. And then you'll see some that are like super wicked. They do it with an extra flair. They go the extra 10 miles, not the extra mile, the extra 10 miles. And while they're doing it, they're emboldening the others that are not quite as wicked as they are to increase their wickedness as well. And that's what happens. Then certain other people were so forward. This is the beginning of the Hellenization, the Greekization. I just made that word up. Now, Jesse, you know that's not a word. Yeah, I just made the word, the Greekization, okay? You can use it, but I want $10 every time you use it, okay? Hey, man, I got to have my fun. Then certain other people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Hey, Mr. Esau, can you give me permission, please, to be extra wicked, please? Hell yeah, says Mr. Esau. Of course Esau's going to give you permission to be extra super wicked. Okay? That's what they did. They went to Esau and asked for permission to be extra super wicked. And Esau was like, I like this plan. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem. That's your modern day gymnasiums, your place of exercise. Where you got the slutty hoes of today going in there, wearing all manner of skimpy attire and then getting upset with you when you look at them. Right? Wearing these short little coochie cutter spandex shorts with ruffles right up the ass crack that draw your eye right to their ass crack, okay? And showing all manner of skin. So if they aren't covering it with shrink wrap with ruffles up the ass crack, they're showing skin all over the place, right? Okay? Because basically the spirit that they're in is to be naked. And basically they are naked. It's just they have some shrink wrap over it. Okay? And that goes back to the customs of the Greeks. Okay? That's where that goes back. These public gyms, gymnasiums, where you go to quote unquote exercise. Okay? And when they exercise, they were oftentimes naked. Okay? They would do their competitions and their exercise naked. Okay? Now today they kind of want to feign themselves to be more civilized than that now. But they're essentially naked. There's nothing to the imagination. You can see the fucking pussy lips. For real. Okay? I mean, it's shrink wrap. Yeah, I mean, you ain't seeing the skin, but you can see it's all there. Okay? You know what I'm talking about. They call it camel toe, man. Okay? This is where it comes from. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the... Let me tell you something, man. You put some pussy lips in front of a man, he gonna look, okay? Okay? Right? But then when you look, these crazy women, man, they want to get mad at you for looking. Okay? Completely and totally insane. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised. Yeah, some were taken and Now, in the greatest sense, this is talking about spiritually uncircumcised, because the true circumcision, the most important circumcision, is a circumcision of the heart. So they were making themselves uncircumcised in heart. Okay, in other words, they were becoming like the heathen in their hearts, their spirits. But some also went and sewed foreskin back on their rod. They went and sewed foreskin back on their rod. That's an actual procedure that you can get done. And they literally, physically made themselves uncircumcised. And made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant. They forsook the holy covenant. Okay? I don't want nothing to do with this laws, commandments, and statutes anymore. I don't want anything to do with this worshiping the Most High anymore. I'm rocking with the Greeks from here on out, and joined themselves to the heathen. Any heathen? No, man. What heathen nation was in power? Well, this is the Greek Empire. The Greeks, right? So the heathen it's talking about here is the Greeks, and you had other heathen nations joined to the Greeks as well. But what were they called? They were called Greeks also, because they were keeping the customs of the Greeks as well. The Israelites and the non-Israelites alike that kept the customs of the Greeks were being called Greeks and were sold to do mischief. This is the beginnings of the Hellenization of certain Israelites, many Israelites, okay, that would later become called and become referred to as Greeks, which is why the Apostle Paul says there's neither Jew nor Greek, because those Greeks, actually their descendants, because this was probably 4 or 5 generations before the Apostle Paul, though the descendants of those Israelites that became Greeks and were Hellenized, that became Hellen, okay, they were now, their descendants, 4 or 5, maybe 6 or so generations later, they were now being brought back into the fold, okay? That's why it says there's neither Jew, Israelite, obviously, nor Greek, also Israelite, okay? These Greeks here are Israelites, all right? 2 groups of foreigners, 2 groups of heathen, 2 groups of strangers, 2 groups of Gentiles, and the Greeks are Israelites who have been raised, because this is generations later now, who have been raised according to the customs, the manner, and the ways of the Greeks. They were speaking the Greek language. A lot of them didn't even know Hebrew or didn't know much Hebrew at all. Okay? They were raised according to the Greeks. They were calling themselves Greeks. They were dressing like the Greeks, eating like the Greeks. And before they repented, they were worshiping the Greek gods. See? These Greeks are Israelites. So, like I said, when we come back next time, we're going to, I already told you this is getting into how Antiochus Epiphanes started to trouble us, right? Pretty bad. It was getting bad. And then you get into 41, and it continues with the Hellenization, and it ramps up majorly. Okay? And what we're going to find out is that it was under penalty of death. So even Israelites that didn't want to do it, they did it to avoid being killed. They did it to, maybe they was like, well, you know what, if it's going to cost me, oh, but wait a minute, they're going to kill my baby? They're going to kill my little Johnny? They're going to kill little Susie? Oh, well, I can't have that happen. So they caved in. And then some were like, no, we can't do that under no circumstances. And some were put to death. And then you had those that were like, no, we ain't doing it under any circumstances, and we're going to flee. And then ultimately, we're going to fight. Okay? And some that fought were put to death. Okay? A lot were, actually. Okay? And so why in the world would they be having that type of advertisement on a Bible app? You tell me, man. Come on. Anyway, so we'll get into that next time, and we're going to go down to the end of the chapter. Okay? This is the history of the Hellenization, okay, of the nation of Israel. Okay? A certain portion of it. Not all, because some resisted. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Before I do, want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shabbat, Rachak Wadash, double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and respect to the brothers teaching, pushing this truth throughout the four corners of the earth. I don't want to reside, this lesson was edifying and encouraging to you, Achim. and the akhwaf that may be listening and or watching. Ayashme Kwana, Azainu Shamai Shamai. Let him who has ears to hear. Kwam Yasharala, Baba Kwasha, Abai Babal Etha, Wakal Adawam. Shalom Lahabacharium, Shalom.